Hey everyone, this is Nikachu, and it appears that I did not record round 4. Unfortunately, I just didn't hit the record button, so we're going to have to use the replayer. We're going to thank our sponsor, the manabase.com, and if you want to go check out some excellent limited content, go check out The Oracle by Etienne Basson on the manabase.com. So we won the die roll. We have a one-line hand, so I most definitely mulligan this thing. Not a very difficult decision, but our mulligan is fantastic. We have an Ether Vial hand with a great curve, 1 drop, 2 drop into 3 drop, and hopefully we can find another land so that we can play the Smuggler's Copter, and it'll just find us gas from there. Smuggler's Copter, very good with Ether Vial, just fantastic. And I pick up a Curse Catcher and I believe a bottom this thing because you really want to get this Smuggler's Copter in play. It's a fantastic addition to the deck. Land go. Well, land Ether Vial go. Our opponent sacrifices Arid Mesa. Play Blood Crypt. What is going on here? Vexing Devil. So this is basically a burn deck. Vexing Devil, not a very good card in burn, mostly because you get to choose when you take damage from it or not. You have the option of taking 4 damage immediately, but it gets wiped off the board. So it's like you've dismembered a Goblin Guide, which I think is at a very good rate. So yeah, we take the 4 life, it gets wiped off the board, but the thing is, much later in the game when we have a bunch of creatures on the board, it's not worth any damage because we can just let it sit on the board as a 4/3 creature. So we're going to tick up the Aether Vial to 1. It's really nice that we have Tideshaper Mystic because now we can use our Aether Vial on 1, be much more aggressive with the deck. So our opponent has played Goblin Guide. Now I have the option to just 2-for-1 myself here. I can put both creatures in front of the Goblin Guide. I don't know exactly what our opponent's mana is like, but I decide that maybe, do you know what, I'm going to race this guy. Yeah, let's try racing them. If they don't have a second land drop, I think we are in a very good position to try to race because we're going to play Harbinger of the Tides next turn. We're going to bounce this Goblin Guide back to their hand, and then hopefully we can, you know, get through a lot of damage. I believe, what was on top of our deck? I believe it was a Lord? Yeah, it was a Lord, so I had even more reason to believe that I could try to race our opponent with these 2 1-drops hitting our opponent for 4. I think also in the burn matchup, if our opponent is very choked on mana, that we should take a more aggro roll and a less of an attrition roll, whereas if our opponent is curving out, we want to make really desperate blocks and trades so that we can save as many life points as possible, because our opponent is going to like throw a bunch of burn spells at us. But if they are curving out with land, that actually means there's less burn spells in their hand, but there's just less that they can play, and we can potentially curve out and kill our opponent. So right now we're in great shape. We can hit for 2. I'm probably still going to be playing this Harbinger next turn. Not going to play it just yet. I'm going to wait for the Goblin Guy to attack so that we can get a land. So here's interesting. Our opponent is playing Claim to Fame. Unfortunately, we can't see the Fame part. The sorcery, return target creature card with converted mana cost 2 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield. Okie dokie, so I get the option again, do I want to pay for life? And I decide that I do. So here's the both half of the card. Fame is target creature gets +2/+0 and haste until end of turn. Interesting card in this matchup because if a Goblin Guy dies, you can like bring it back, make it bigger, has haste, pretty good. Or you can do the same thing with Vexing Devil and it would be huge. But I'm gonna just take more. I'm just gonna take more damage. I just don't want this thing on the board, and I'm pretty certain that even with Curse Catcher on the board, we can race our opponent. So our opponent showed Silver Gill Adept. That's great. I'm going to bounce this Goblin Guide. We're going to get way ahead on damage here. I decided to play the Silver Gill Adept first. In the event that I draw a land, we can play Smuggler's Copter or Lord of Atlantis. I believe I put the Smuggler's Copter in play, though. Yeah, so I'm not going to put anything on my main phase. There's no point. Let's get in that damage. Let's get that Smuggler's Copter in play, and then next turn we're completely online. We're going to be hitting for, well, we're going to be hitting for lethal. Opponent plays Eidolon, but it's pretty useless right now, and Bump in the Night, which is also useless and doesn't matter, and our opponent resigns. Or do they resign? No, maybe they wait to my turn. I'm going to put the Lord of Atlantis in play. We're going to crew the Copter. I tied Shaper Mystic the Blood Crypt. It doesn't matter. I have more things to attack with than they can block, but I'm just having some fun with the battlefield. It's all lethal. And we take game 1. So our starting hand is just useless. We have no threats. We have Immutavault, but it's basically like a 5-land hand with some really awful interaction. I brought in the Echoing Truths because maybe they're playing Ensnaring Bridge, and Ensnaring Bridge is a thing in Burn right now, so I'm bringing that's basically what it's in here for. So let's put it to some use. Whoops. I think the last hand was like very few lands and a lot of Master of Waves. So I mulligan again, and we get to a Curse Catcher, Lord of Atlantis, Dispel hand. This hand's totally fine on 5, and I keep it. And I believe I keep this Harbinger because it's a creature that we can play and can interact with Goblin Guide. Unfortunately, what's really annoying against Burn is you really want to keep lands on top of your library, but only if like you desperately need these lands, because you know there's always a chance your opponent plays like turn 1 Goblin Guide and gets you right back in the game. Fortunately, we have a curve. This is very good. Opponent plays Bump in the Night. So if you don't know what Bump in the Night is, it's just Flame Rift Bolt, but it has a flashback of 6, 1 red, 5 colorless. That's pretty good for the late game. Goblin Guide gets in. Not gonna block. I think it's too early to block. Our opponent Lightning Bolts, and I believe I Curse Catcher this because our opponent has 3 cards left in hand, and I have to start respecting our life total. Draw another Curse Catcher, which is nice, because now if I draw a 3rd land, I'm going to probably be able to play Lord of Atlantis and Curse Catcher on the same turn. So this is not ideally how I want to use Harbinger of the Tides, but it is how I'm going to use it. We're going to bounce Goblin Guide. It's going to use up a little bit more of the mana. But like ideally, you want to get that Harbinger of the Tides in play during combat. So if we have 4 mana, or if we can Violet in play, that's like the most valuable we can... That's where we get the real value out of Harbinger. So I wasn't expecting this. This was really awkward. Eidolon of the Great Revel sometimes is great against us, because if we don't have a Vile hand and our opponent has already done 7 damage to us, this Eidolon is just a beating. And I'm not even sure how to get through it. The best thing that we could draw at this very moment would be Aether Vial, and then we would just play very slowly. I appear to have the option to maybe just attack with a Harbinger of the Tides and like hold back Mutavault, but I know that's not what I did. I believe I played Lord of Atlantis, not really liking this because it leaves me... Lord of Atlantis is incredibly vulnerable. I think better might have been attack with Harbinger of the Tides, leave Mutavault up to block Eidolon or the Goblin Guide, and then if I were to draw one more island, I could play Lord of Atlantis. I think this was a misstep with this much little life. And then, for example, I have Mutavault up. Let's say that our opponent plays Goblin Guide, attacks with Eidolon. They took 2 damage, and we're going to block the Eidolon with our Mutavault. And if the Eidolon doesn't attack and the Goblin Guide just attacks, okay, whatever, we trade. It's not a big deal. I don't think it's a big deal. So I think the correct move was just attack and pass with Mutavault up. Opponent plays Swissbeard, which is really dangerous because we know our opponent has Goblin Guide, so they've got like even more gas coming. So then, and here's the problem: our Lord of Atlantis was very vulnerable. I need to wait for at least 1 more island. Got this Dispel in our hand, and it's just sort of rotting away. And now this there's this Swissbeard that I can't really block. We're drawing pretty nice cards. Like Negate is a great card, but it's just not for the situation. And now I'm just passing because I can't afford to play anything at this point, hoping my opponent makes a bad attack. Bump in the Night happens, sure. If I negate this thing, I'm still taking 2 damage. Here comes Goblin Guide. And the top of my deck is an island, so we get an island from Goblin Guide. Fortunately, this is a situation where I can very comfortably eat up the Monastery Swift Spear, just 1 for 1, which is like the most annoying card on the board. You could make the argument that I was supposed to chump block the Goblin Guide, and then, trade with the Goblin Guide, chump block with the Swift Spear, because I'm at, my life total is too low, but at the same time I don't really know what I can draw at this point that would get me out of this. Well, Aether Vial, that's a bit late. You don't you think? Don't you think that's a little bit late? I needed you like 4 turns ago. Play the Aether Vial anyway. I don't know what the hell I'm doing here. There's like no way I can win. And my opponent just plays like Claim on some card. Doesn't really matter. Swift Spear, great, sure. Come kill me. And I'm dead, and we go to game 3. So here we are for all the marbles. Unfortunately, not doing very well on the opening hands. We got a mulligan. This again, it's a 1-lander. This hand is crap. It's a 4-lander with like. This is a very mediocre card in this matchup. Like it's okay, but it's mostly in here for Ensnaring Bridge if our opponent has it, and probably our opponent doesn't have Ensnaring Bridge, but you never know. And this is like not going to do anything without the backup of the Lord, so we have to mulligan this again. And then I mulligan down to this pretty beautiful hand. This is a Master Waves is a bit expensive, but at least these guys are Lords, and we have 1 land, so we can keep this and hope that we're capable of drawing a land by our next turn. Find a Cavern of Souls on top, ship it. Let's do this. We're not going to lose to Burn. Burn, quite a good matchup for us. Vexing Devil, perfect. Paying the life. So we're in a really good spot here because we can potentially really aggro our opponent out. Searing Blaze is going to be completely offline next turn. So we're going to play our we're going to play our Master of the Pearl China. We're going to attack with Curse Catcher. So we're protected against Searing Blaze, and we can get in for a reasonable amount of damage, and if we can curve out into 2 more lands, like Master Waves is just going to finish the game off so easily. Take another 4 damage, no problem. Bring on the damage. Bump to the Knight, no problem. 9 life is nothing compared to the 6 that we're going to deal to them. Like, we have lethal. We just have we have a 4-turn clock. If they're not going to interact with our creatures, we're going to attack for 6 next turn, put them down to 9, and we have 9 damage on the battlefield. So if we untap with these creatures, we definitely win because we just top deck the negate. Nine power on the board. You don't kill these things, it's now or never, but it doesn't really matter. It's sort of like basically over anyway. Anything that kills like a Lord, I can Curse Catcher at this point, and then I just have to hold up negate for next turn. So I countered the Lightning Bolt, so our opponent did everything out of order. But even if they did it in order, I would attack for 4 this turn, and probably the win after that. Well, it would still take a few turns. Our opponent is running out of gas as well. Our opponent is now down to 2 cards. And our opponent plays Bumps the Night. I just take it because there's no reason not to counter it. And we attack for the win. That's it. And I hope that was exciting. Yeah, Burn, relatively good matchup. This game could have been a little bit more interesting if they bolted one of our creatures first and then Curse Catcher, then hit us with the Flame Rift. Possible that I might have countered that because, with the Curse Catcher a few turns ago, if they went bolt on Lord when we had 2 Lords on the Curse Catcher and then they Flame Rift me, because I might want to keep my life total a little bit higher so I can just, I don't know, nail our opponent for a few turns with... No, we were at 9. They were at 9 life. I would have to look at it, what I would want to do. Probably I would keep the Curse Catcher around. Yeah, we just probably keep the Curse Catcher around so that we still have a 3-turn clock with Negate in our hand. I think it's quite reasonable. So we're going to thank our sponsor, the manabase.com. We're also going to thank, we're going to thank also all my patrons supporting me on Patreon. Thank you very much for watching. This has been Nikachu playing Popular Folk in Modern.